Have you ever stared at a spreadsheet for so long that the numbers just start to blur together? You know the answer's in there somewhere, but you just can't see it. Well, today, we're going to fix that. We're talking about turning that confusing data into clear, compelling visual stories using two really powerful tools. Okay, let's dive in.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about the big problem, data overload. Then we'll bring in our first tool, the Grouped Barplot, and see how it works in a case study. After that, we'll introduce our second tool, the heat map, and put it to work on another problem. And to finish up, we'll give you a clear guide on when to use each one. Let's get to it.
All right, so here's a situation that probably feels a little too familiar. You've done all the hard work, you've collected your data, maybe for that big project for Module 3, but now you're just left with this, a wall of numbers. So the big question is, how in the world do we find the story that's hiding inside all that?
Take a look at this. It's a classic cross-tabulation table, probably looks a lot like the one from your Module 3 assignment, right? It's showing student counts by their major and whether or not they're in a mentorship program. Now, all the information is technically here, but is it clear? Can you instantly see the most important trend? It's tough. Your eyes have to jump all over the place, and finding the actual pattern feels like a chore.
And that really brings us to the main question for today. How do we take this raw data, this jumble of numbers, and turn it into something that gives us clear, actionable insight? We need better tools for the job.
So let's meet our first tool. This is the Grouped Barplot, and it is absolutely fantastic for making side-by-side comparisons. It's basically designed to take a table just like that one we just saw and make it make sense in an instant.
So what is it, exactly? Well, a grouped bar plot is what you pull out when you want to look at two different categories at the same time. You have your main category, those are the big groups along the bottom. And then inside each of those, you've got a secondary category that makes up those smaller side-by-side bars. It's that structure that makes comparing things so incredibly easy.
Okay, theory is great, but let's actually see this thing in action. We're going to use a grouped bar plot on our data from that Module 3 table to answer a really specific question about student life. Here it is. This is the question we want to answer. Is there some kind of connection between what a student is studying and whether they decide to join a mentorship program? We kind of suspect there might be, but our table of numbers sure didn't make it obvious.
Now we could start with a simple bar chart, something like this. This shows us the total number of students in each major. And that's useful, I guess. We can see which major is the biggest, but it completely ignores our second variable, that whole mentorship thing. It's only telling us part of the story.
And this is where the magic happens. Just look at how a grouped bar plot makes everything so clear. Our main category, the student's major, gives us these three big clusters on the bottom. Then our secondary category, mentorship status, splits each of those into two bars right next to each other. Now, comparing them isn't just possible, it's practically effortless.
And boom, the insight just leaps off the screen. With a single glance, you can see it. Engineering students have the highest rate of mentorship participation. We went from a confusing table to a crystal clear insight in one simple step. Now that is the power of a good visualization.
Okay, that was great for comparing counts of things. But what if our question is a little more complex? What if we're not just counting people, but we're measuring something, like a score or a value? For that, we need a totally different tool. We need a heat map.
So here's our next research question. And notice the difference here. We now have three variables. Two are categories, what study method you use, and what class time you have. But that third variable is a number, the average test score. We want to see how the combination of those first two things affects that score.
This is the perfect job for a heat map. It is designed specifically to show the size, the magnitude of a value across two different categories. And its secret weapon isn't height, like in a bar chart. Its secret weapon is color. The intensity of the color in each little box is what tells the entire story.
You know, the idea behind a heat map is actually super simple. Let's break it down. First, you arrange your two categories into a grid, with rows and columns. Second, you pop your number, your quantitative value, into each box where a row and column meet. And third, you just color in the boxes. A low number gets a light color, and a high number gets a deep, dark, intense color. That's it.
All right, let's put this to the test with our second case study. We are going hunting for the hotspots, those specific combinations of studying and class time that lead to the best results.
Okay, here's our data grid. Down the rows, we've got our study methods. Across the columns, we have class time. And in each box is the average test score. Now, just for a second, imagine this is a heat map. Scan the numbers with me. Where's the lowest score? Ah, that's 78. That box would be our lightest, palest color. Now, where's the highest? Oh, look at that. Tutoring and morning classes, a 95. That box would be the darkest, most intense color on the whole map. That's our hotspot.
And just like that, the heat map makes the answer impossible to miss. The insight is clear as day. The combination of getting tutoring and taking morning classes gets the highest test scores. A heat map is just brilliant at finding these peaks, these hotspots where two different factors come together to create the strongest result.
So we've seen two really powerful tools in action now, the Grouped Barplot and the heat map. But the final and maybe most important step is knowing which one to grab from your toolbox. And it all comes down to the kind of question you're trying to answer.
Think of this as your cheat sheet. You use a grouped bar plot when you have two categories and you just want to compare the counts or frequencies. You're asking, how do these groups stack up against each other? But you pull out the heat map when you have two categories plus a number. Then you're asking, which combination gives me the highest or lowest value? It's all about matching the tool to your data.
I want to leave you with this idea from the brilliant statistician John Tukey. He said, "The greatest value of a picture is when it forces us to notice what we never expected to see." And that's exactly what these charts do. They don't just show you what you already know. They help you discover the hidden stories that were totally invisible in just rows and columns of numbers. So as you go on to your own projects, your own research, just remember this: your data has a story that is just waiting to be told. The only real question is, which tool are you going to use to tell it?